Hello.
Hello. Hey, John. How are you?
Very good. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, no problem.
It's great. Thanks very
How are
much.
you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm enjoying the crappy weather we have here, which is very usual for Ireland.
Yeah, we have it too. It's been raining like crazy the last bunch of days.
Yeah, we had it same as that, but like, I mean, you get used to it. I kind of like the rain. There's something cool about the rain. I think it's kind of
It
cool.
depends on how long it goes for. I like it sometimes, but I'm really tired of it right now.
Really?
Yeah.
I was listening to the track you put out a few days ago, Put It Down. That's a cool track.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad
Very,
you like it.
yeah, it's super kind of modern kind of sounding.
Well, yeah, I think it's interesting you say that because I'm glad. Because it's also a bit nostalgic for me because it's a style of music that I grew up listening to when I lived in the Bay Area, Northern California,
Okay.
when in the 70s when Herbie was making all those cool records and Sly Stone was making records and Tower of Power was, in full flight. And
Yeah.
that kind of funk, which is has a loose jazz thing, but it's also really tight and it's
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. Like you can hear in the production everything's so kind of glued together, which I love. Like you're saying that tightness, I love that kind of sound. Did you so when you were young, did you grow up listening to music apart from like jazz, or was it just always jazz, or was there a bunch of
Well,
everything together?
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York in the 60s. So Motown music was huge on the radio.
Mm,
So the first music that I heard really um, that I connected with the bass was that, and also the Beatles and the Who and Hendrix and all that. But I definitely was checking out James Jamerson, although we didn't know his name
yeah.
because he wasn't credited. And I didn't own a lot of records. I heard him on the radio.
Okay.
But we heard a lot of stuff. My father liked opera too, so because we're all Italians, and so I heard some of that. But I remember they had a Glenn Campbell record too, which was kind of amazing. It had all these Jimmy Webb tunes,
Wow. Oh,
the
like
famous
Wichita
songwriter.
Lineman.
Yeah,
It's a
it was
great
that
song.
record, the record with Wichita Lineman and all that. It was a big record that Glenn Campbell made. I don't remember the actual title of the record, but it had all those Jimmy Webb tunes like
Yeah.
that. And Glenn Campbell was a great guitar player and a great singer. And so I heard that. My uncle was into that stuff. He was into like Johnny Cash and all this too. So I was hearing a lot of R&B, like Motown music.
Mm.
Then the first jazz records came home into our house from my grandfather and my mother's side when I was about 8, and I heard Oscar Peterson, Wes Montgomery, Jimmy Smith. And the first time I ever heard Wayne Shorter was on an Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers record called Mosaic. So yeah, that was pretty eventful. And then later on, I just kept listening to a lot of stuff. I've always been really eclectic.
How was that
So
like going to listen to someone like Wayne Shorter, and then fast forward, you're actually playing with him and an integral part of his
yeah,
later albums. That must have been incredible.
my story is like Cinderella kind of.
Yeah.
I was just a kid playing stickball in, East Flatbush in Brooklyn, playing every kind of game that you could play with a rubber ball and playing football and, in the street playing roller hockey with those funny skates that clamp onto your shoes and when you skate really fast they vibrate open and you fly out, you can fall. And it was crazy. I mean, at first we played by ear, my brother and I. My brother got me into it. He's a guitarist. He's also a pastor, great, amazing person. And he got me into it. And I tried to play the guitar like him, but I'm lefty. I'm lefty. I play righty, and the pick just didn't feel very good to me. I just couldn't ever
Okay.
really get it. Now I play a little bit. I was working on it more recently just to see if I could get my coordination with the pick because it's a nice sound too. And I did like a lot of the British rock stuff. Really caught my ear because I was coming up in the '60s. So we had the Beatles, the Who, um, Led Zeppelin was great, Cream. So it
Cream.
was kind of a golden age of that, what became many musics after that, but the original people, the Beatles, the Stones, kind
Yeah,
of amazing to
I
actually
know.
have that happening when
Crazy.
you're a kid.
Yeah, I'm jealous. I'm jealous. But like even if you look at like the Beach Boys, you know, with the Wrecking Crew and Carol Kay, like that kind of style of
Yeah,
bass, and I know Brian would do picked bass, and then he would do a double bass, so he kind of having double bass on it. It's like
yeah,
every
yeah, yeah,
unique
yeah.
kind of sound.
And when I was coming in the studios in LA, late 70s, early 80s, I did play with Hal Blaine a little bit, and
No
even with Tommy
way.
Tedesco. Tommy
Wow.
Tedesco was around, and but it was, man, Tommy was incredible. He never made a mistake. He just
Really?
could read anything, just like crazy. Yeah,
Wow.
he was perfect for that group of people because he could sort of do a lot of things and fake his way through anything that wasn't sure about, and he was famous for having like one guitar there and hiding behind a baffle, and they'd say, well, yeah, okay, Tommy, can you play the mandolin part? And he goes, sure. And he go, you know, he would just sort of make his guitar morph into whatever. Um,
Wow.
yeah, he was a character. Very nice too. He was very nice to me, and very nice to other people when they were breaking in. He was very kind to Chuck Rainey as well, and he was very good to Larry Carlton and Lee Ritenour when they were jumping into the scene. So
Yeah.
I caught the tail end of that. I played some gigs with Johnny Guerin, famous drummer who, um, you know, was also a jazz drummer. He had played with Monk, but I
Incredible.
played with him with Joe Farrell, the great saxophone tenor player. So there was all kind of people there, and of course, um, the uh, the amazing British export Victor Feldman, who was brilliant. I played with him when I was very young. I was in his trio.
Man, that must just be incredible because you're just like soaking everything up from all these different influences, which
Well,
informs your
yeah.
music.
Then they teach you stuff too. They some stuff that they tell you don't really get it at the time, and then a few years go by and you go, oh, that's what they meant. You
Yeah,
know.
wow, wow. I know
Yeah,
you've
it
touched.
was an interesting time to be there.
I can imagine. I can imagine. If there was there any sessions that you played, be it well, just sessions in the studio that just kind of blew your mind that you were just like, wow, you just had that moment of like, oh my God. I'm sure many.
Well, I yeah, there were a lot. I mean, because it was all like all of a sudden you're playing with your heroes, you know, playing with Chick, playing with Wayne Shorter, playing with Herbie,
Wow.
um, you know, on the Possibilities record and also the Directions of Music record that he made. But Wayne, all those Wayne records that we did, Chick, all the Electric Band and the Trio records, and the first gig, to give you an idea. So I get the gig finally with Chick. I was trying to get the gig. It's a long story how I got it and everything. I finally get the gig. So then he calls up one day, goes, okay, first gig. I said, oh, great. What are we doing? So we're going to be on national TV. We're doing the Merv Griffin show, and Herbie's playing also. So I was like, wow, you know.
Yeah.
So there I am standing on the stage at Merv Griffin show, is a nationally syndicated show in America, and I look across, and there's Herbie and Chick, and I'm playing with them. It's kind of hard to believe.
That's
There was
surreal.
a, there was also a thing that we did. I was, you know, because I was on GRP Records. Chick got me a record deal, which was incredible. I got to do my own records. But there was one GRP big band record that was all about the blues, and we got, you know, BB King came and played with us, and it was like,
Oh,
what? And
that's
that was
amazing.
freaky. And I also got
That's
to play with him one more time later on. One of these crazy things too. They were honoring him, and Terry Lynn Carrington and I were part of the rhythm section, and we got to play honor BB, and we got to play with Robert Cray also, and Joe Lewis. Joe Lewis Walker was playing, Keb Mo, um, and BB with the Edge and Bono. We did When Love Comes to Town. So there we
wow.
were, like, what, you know?
That's
So
incredible.
so you know, I've had some crazy and very schizo things because I play electric and acoustic, so I get to play a lot of different music.
I love that record that you did, Heart of Bass, and it's got those last six songs that are Chick Corea pieces.
Yeah,
That's
he
a
wrote those
brilliant,
beautiful pieces.
yeah, it's a brilliant
Those were
record.
hard. I mean, he didn't finish them until a few weeks before the record. We were on the road, and I was trying to
Right,
learn them. I was
right.
practicing in my hotel room, and then
Wow.
Jeff Beal wrote that big giant concerto on that
Yeah,
record
yeah,
for me,
yeah.
and that was a lot to learn.
I can imagine. Like, how long did that record take to record? Because there's a lot in it. It's a big record.
We were ready, and it was probably, there was a lot of stuff, so I'm sure it took about a week to mix and master it and everything. But
A
that's
week.
not much time when you think about what we did.
Yeah.
It was probably in those days because Chick, on all my records like that, he gave me a really lockout cheap deal on the studio, Mad Hatter. So at the most, it would have been 2 weeks. Maybe we did it in a week and then we mixed for a week.
That's quick, especially by today's standards. Things go on a lot longer. Well, for me
Well,
anyways.
in certain
'Cause
in certain kinds of music, in jazz music, a lot of times you make a record in a day, or you make a
yeah.
record in 2 days.
Are the
So
yeah.
that was for me luxury when we got to have, when we would do my record. Sometimes we were the other records, not Heart of the Bass. We did that in the daytime, but we would do like 6 p.m. till whenever. We could have the studio till 9 a.m., but
Mm,
we would kind of burn out after a while. But we would only do like 2 tunes a night because in those days we had some budgets and they weren't bad. And then the mixing was the hard work because trying to do two mixes a night
oh.
um, was challenging sometimes.
Would you be involved with the mixing? Would you stay there
Yeah,
and wait for it?
I
Oh, you
learned a
would, yeah.
lot. I'd sit there right next to Bernie Kirsch, who was Chick's engineer, and I learned a lot about what mixing is through Bernie.
Yeah, because it's a total
Yeah.
art in itself. You're there's masking frequencies and stuff like that. It's not just obviously the players, of course, make it. If you've great players, obviously you know more than I do. They're gonna make the
It
bones of it.
makes it easier for the
Yeah,
for the engineer.
yeah,
But when I started making records, I would just say, "Oh, put some echo on it." Like I didn't even know all the different kinds of reverbs or pre-delay or, you know,
yeah,
I was pretty young in my
yeah.
20s. Um, yeah.
Do you prefer the how you used to record when you were younger as opposed to now? Because it's different with digital and obviously back then you were recording
Well,
on tape.
I mean, yeah, we did tape and we made, we were recording for a CD company, so we made CDs, but they were vinyl that we had vinyl records also of my first handful of records. And then it changed. For a while the digital didn't sound very good. Now it sounds pretty good. It's, they really
Hmm.
they it's much more warm than it used to be, which is great.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there are a lot of pluses sometimes, with Pro Tools and all that. I have Pro Tools in my basement studio, and um, it enables you to do things that I couldn't do before. I'm not a great piano player. So sometimes if I need to play a piano part because I'm writing a lot of different stuff, I can slow it down and play it
getcha.
in, like that. And that's a big plus.
Yeah. It was good. There's something cool though back. I know we're touched on the Beatles, but like the way they do very speed and stuff like that, and that song "In My Life" that they would slow the tape down, play it really slow, and then speed it up to give that kind of almost harpsichord kind of sound on the piano.
I love that,
Yeah, me
that,
too.
um, that amazing period of music. My brother and I were big Beatles fans, and I guess my favorite ones are probably Rubber Soul Revolver and Abbey Road. We just wore the sucker out, and Let It Be too. Those were amazing.
Yeah,
Um, and of course, they were all great in their own ways. Those records, but Abbey Road was kind of I mean, it was a crazy masterpiece in my opinion.
yeah. And that's the first record. I think they went stereo on that, so it kind of was more expansive. I think I like the psychedelic stuff. I'm into I love Tomorrow
Oh,
Never
you like the
Knows.
White record? Yeah, yeah, all of that. I love that too.
Yeah, like just
Yeah,
incredible stuff. And the span they went to, if the way the leaps they made in sound from like She Loves You to
yeah,
Penny Lane or We'll Say Strawberry, it's just
yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
Like,
Well, and also George Martin had something to do with that too. He was incredible.
yeah, just amazing.
Yeah,
I back to talking about Wayne Shorter. How did you get involved with Wayne?
I met him through Chick.
Oh, all right.
We were on. I got the Chick Corea gig in 1980 in '85, and then we went on the road in '86 on this particular tour. It was called Chick, Wayne, and Al. Wayne had just released the record Atlantis, and I wasn't on that. I hadn't met him yet. So But we were playing opposite each other. We got to know each other a bit. And then the next year he hired me to play on Phantom Navigator, which was a 1987 record. And then he would call me from time to time, but I was still tied up heavily with Chick through the end of the 80s and into early 90s. And then I had been doing solo tours with my own bands. And I finally, not because I really wanted to leave Chick, but I felt like I needed more control over my personal schedule, like how much time I was on the road.
Hmm.
Because I was young when my first wife, I was pretty young, 24. And then I went out on the road a bunch with Chick. And at one point I had to go home and figure out whether I was going to stay married. It was one of those crazy things. And then
Yeah.
that kind of didn't work out. And, but Chick was so focused on traveling, and then I met my wife, Sachi, who we've been together for like 28 years and we have 2 daughters. So
Worked out for the best.
I was older. I was in my 30s and I was very naive the first time out.
Yeah.
And I
I'd
think
say,
I was
sorry.
foolish. I thought I could settle down and I wasn't. I was too young. So I just rushed into something and it didn't work out very well.
Would you be like just doing constant year tours without
Well,
breaks?
it wasn't like rock and roll, but it was, we did do, 2-month tours of Europe, one-nighters,
Yeah.
2 months. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. I can
It's a
imagine.
lot.
Does it bleed into each other? Do days you're like, what day is it? Does
Yeah, oh
everything
yeah.
bleed into each other? Yeah.
But it was amazing for the band, the sound of the band, and also for individual players just growing so much because you're playing constantly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how I really got firmly rooted with the 6-string bass, because I was playing it
Um,
all the time.
do you play differently? And yeah, obviously it's probably a stupid question, but do you play differently in your vibe of playing when you're playing electric or upright?
Yeah, I think you play differently because there's so many different styles of music. And even though I don't like labels in music,
Hmm.
I do like all kinds of genres. So whether you're labeled it or not, there are distinctive things about different kinds of music that are so beautiful. And I'm happy playing an R&B song. I'm also happy playing. I was originally a rock and roll bass player too. Like it's sad that I don't get called to do that anymore because I was playing it when it was created.
Yeah.
Well, the people a little older than me, obviously, not me. I didn't create any rock and roll, but because I was too young. But I was not very far off from the source. I was
Wow.
born in '59, so the electric bass didn't even come into being until like maybe '51 or something like that.
So
So
why did you choose bass? Was there any reason that you just
well, I think because
gravitized?
I tried to be like my brother and played the guitar, and I couldn't do it. It didn't feel very good. I'm lefty, and the pick just felt really horrible. And in those days, the only left-handed people there were playing music were McCartney and Hendrix that I knew of. So there
Yeah.
weren't like, it wasn't like, oh yeah, we'll go get a left-handed bass, or a left-handed guitar. No, it's what, didn't
Yeah.
even think about it.
Yeah.
So my brother said, well, my brother was smart. He said, why don't you get the bass? You can use your fingers and no pick. Um, and I did, and it felt so good. We got a bass. It was a Sears Telstar, terrible. We got it for $10. It was hanging on somebody's wall as an ornament down the street on East 39th Street where we lived in Brooklyn. And that was my first electric.
That's cool. So
It was
you obviously,
horrendous, short scale.
I think everyone's first instrument was horrendous. I had horrendous guitar. They're actually the cheaper guitars nowadays are actually not bad quality compared to, would
Yeah.
say, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, they were shocking. So I can't imagine what they were even back then. So
Well,
we,
there was a mixture. There, some of them were pretty horrible, but some of those old harmonies are pretty good. Actually, they're not bad. Or you had some vintage guitars that have a certain sound. But yeah,
yeah. And
the
what
the
was,
Sears Telstar bass was not going to survive.
it didn't make any records, did
No,
it?
I don't even know where it went. I don't even know when I got rid of it, but I did.
Yeah. Do you remember when you got your first like proper bass that you were like, okay,
Yeah,
I'm
my
happy? Yeah.
first good bass I bought in probably 1972 was a 1971 Fender Mustang, and I did
Oh,
get it restored recently. It sounds Great, that bass. Great.
Yeah.
Short scale, but those basses have huge bottom.
Yeah.
And then later, other instruments, I had all kind of stuff. And then when I got settled in with Yamaha, I started getting to really design the instruments and have a say in what
Oh.
I wanted, which was kind of cool.
So what kind of
Yeah.
when you say you say in the in your bass design, what kind of
Well,
what do you actually like?
I designed some of those six strings. They have, well, originally when I first started playing six string, I had a Ken Smith, which was uh, it was a neck through. So then I realized that neck through didn't have the fundamental like the old Fenders that I like because they're bolt on. So we made a bolt on six string. We started making bolt on six strings and wound up making some really good models that could really do a lot of things, not just one sound, but you know, my six strings are like if you didn't see me playing, you wouldn't know unless I took a solo that I'm playing a six string because the
Yeah.
bottom sound is really strong. So and then we did various things. We designed various things. The one of them I designed the preamp, and then at some point we had a one-off made. It's a prototype. There's only one of them that they made, and it's a big semi-hollow that looks like an old jazz guitar
Ooh.
that I played on the record Brooklyn. That's a heavy bass. It's like really heavy, and it has Aguilar preamp and Aguilar pickups.
Wow.
Very good.
That's cool.
That's on Brooklyn.
what what bass players inspired you? I know you
Well,
said James Jameson.
James
Yeah.
Jamerson, Willie Weeks, Gerald Dramont, Chuck Rainey a ton, Paul McCartney big time. Um, I liked him, but I wasn't as influenced by Chris Squire with Yes or John Entwistle. I liked with the Who.
Hmm.
Paul had a more lasting impact in the British scene than the other guys. To me, Paul was a brilliant bass player. Is a brilliant bass player. Really great, I think. Amazing, actually. Yeah, and
Okay.
then of course then I got into all the R&B guys, like I said. Then I got into also Larry Graham when the slapping thing happened. I listened a little bit to Louis Johnson, of course, Jocko and Stanley. Stanley was a big deal for me because he was playing both instruments on such a high level. He showed me it could be done. We're friends, now we got to be friends over the years. I talked to him the other day. He's great. And then I got into all the jazz bass players, Ray Brown, Ron Carter, people like Israel Crosby with Alma Jamal, I like. But Ron and Ray had a huge impact. Then Dave Holland, Charlie Hayden. I love Jimmy Garrison with Coltrane, Art Davis too on the McCoy Trio records. Um, yeah, and Reggie Workman and so many people. There's so many
Yeah.
players
Ron
and
Carter's.
classical players too.
Yeah.
So and cellists and because I studied classical music and I play a lot with the bow and there's so many things to learn.
Yeah. It's like endless. Like you never.
That's for sure.
It's ever going, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's
Ron Carter's an amazing bass player. I had him on the podcast. I think one of the first few I did. And I was so nervous talking to him. I was like, oh damn! I was like super
yeah, yeah.
nervous.
He's an elder statesman in the music and a brilliant musician. Matter of fact, he had such an impact on me because he's one of the guys that, even though he came up playing bebop and swing and post bop and all these things, he played on a ton of pop records. He played modern music with Miles too. They were really stretching stuff and played a lot of Wayne's music, and so he was a template for me for how to play music that was also more modern and more open, and then also how to play in all kind of styles and on all kind of people's records. I
Yeah,
heard him on those first Wes Montgomery records that I heard. I just was blown away.
they're brilliant. Actually, I was reading a book on McCartney at the moment, and they were talking about the session for what's that song?
Backseat of my car.
And it says that they got people for the Philharmonic, but they also Ron Carter was playing bass on it in the kind of orchestra they'd set up, which is pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah. I never knew that. They never credit it, you see, in the credits. So I was like, if I knew that at the time, I would have asked them that because I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. So yeah, it's in the McCartney book, which is
That's
cool.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I never knew it. I never knew it till I
Yeah.
was reading this book. It's a really good book. It's like McCartney from like 69 to 74 or something like that. It's like 800 pages. It's massive.
I wonder if I have that one. What's
It's got a
um
red cover.
oh, I don't think I have a red McCartney book. There was another McCartney book that I read. I'm looking across at my bookcase. Oh, I don't see it. Red, huh?
Yeah, it's
And it
red.
just says what? It just says, what's the
It's like
title?
hold on. I'll get it for you. I'll be back in a sec.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a sec.
Yeah. Which
That's the
one
one.
is it?
That's the one.
McCartney Legacy.
Yeah, it's a really big book.
I don't know if I have that.
It's brilliant. Yeah, if you want,
I'm gonna have to check that out. There was a big one. There was a one that I read about him that had a lot of stuff about all the personal stuff too. I mean, he did some personal stuff. Who's the author of that one? The one
um,
that you just showed me.
it is Alan Cosson and Adrian Sinclair. I'll show you that there.
I might have. Oh, Cosnan.
Yeah,
Cosnan. Yeah.
Cosson. Yeah.
Yeah. That's. I don't know if I have that. I might. I thought I could have sworn I read, but I'll look. If not, I'll get it. I'll have to
Well,
check that out
if you
for
want,
sure.
I can send you the audiobook because I have the audiobook as well. And because I'm reading it, and then when I'm going to bed, I'm listening to the part of it. So if you want, I can
Yeah,
send you the audiobook, no problem.
that's great. And I'm definitely going to see if I have it somewhere in there. So
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Anything of biographies like on musicians, I just find
I
fascinating.
love them too.
Yeah.
There's a great one on Pablo Casals called Joys and Sorrows that I read
Oh,
years
right.
ago. That's
I
a
must
beautiful one.
I must check that
Really
out.
good. And also there's one on Louis Armstrong called Pops. There's also one on Duke Ellington called Beyond Category, which is really good.
Oh, class. I must
Really
check
good.
that out.
Um, yeah.
Actually, speaking of like biographies and documentaries, it was I love that Wayne Shorter Zero Gravity
I
documentary.
think it's really special.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you.
I was
Um,
oh sorry.
no, go ahead. Yeah, that's
I was when I was watching it, I was like, oh, it's over. And then I seen there was 3 parts. I was like, oh, sweet, because I thought they were only going to
yeah.
do like a mini thing, but it needed that 3 hours or whatever runtime it
Yeah.
was because it was so much to fit in.
And it's just great that, for people who, and I mean, I've been around him most of my life now. He became like a second dad, so, but it's neat to see that other people's reaction because he's very open and talks about a lot of things. And I think that this documentary gives you a real insight into his personality and his genius and his compassion and how he persevered through a lot of really tragic things that happened to him, just
Hmm.
life.
Yeah, I always think he was underrated. I know people who know music probably won't say he's but I still think he's underrated. I think what a composer he was, like amazing composer.
Unbelievable. Modern, I mean, all the classical stuff that we did with our band, it was crazy.
Yeah, but that reckon
Trying to see
Amen.
if I
It's
what's
I
did
am.
you say Eminon? The record Eminon?
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Yeah, that one, there's
Challenging
one
record.
arrangement that he had Danilo and I, yeah, the one that there's a with the orchestra, there's a version of Eminon. I mean, there's a version of the Three Marias on that record.
Oh, class. How long did it take to record that?
That's the one with the illustrated book and all that, right?
Yeah,
That's the one you're talking. Yeah,
the
yeah,
blue cover with the kind of
yeah. It's killer.
it's
Well,
brilliant.
actually, the orchestral stuff we did that in an afternoon. I think it was crazy. It was
Really?
really kind of nutty. But
Wow.
then there's a lot of other stuff that was pulled from live concerts over time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Would Wayne write everything out? Would he score everything out? Like how
Well,
much
the
room was there?
the
Yeah,
orchestral stuff, he would write it for them, but for us, we could make up our own parts. So
brilliant.
I'd have the orchestral bass part, but then I'd have a, a reduction of a piano reduction of what was going on, and I would come in and out as I please. And then also for one of the pieces, Three Marias, Danilo and I orchestrated it. Actually, he gave
Oh,
us a little project because he was writing all these. He was writing a clarinet concerto and a piano concerto for someone else, and he had already written a really cool orchestration of the Three Marias when we did the thing with the Amani Winds Quintet, the woodwind quintet, and our
Mhm.
quartet. So we took the score of that and I put it in Finale, and then we added strings and thinned out the French horn part so they'd have more chance to breathe. He wrote a really hard part.
Oh.
So we did some minor things, but we were really freaked out because we didn't want to ruin it, you know.
Yeah.
But we, you know, we're all composers in that band. So,
Yeah.
and Danilo and I have had some experience orchestrating for bigger things. So yeah.
Do you like orchestrating for big orchestras?
Yeah. I mean, you know, that's something that you don't really get to do that much because I
Yeah.
mean, I did one film so far and I'm trying to do more,
Brilliant.
but I love writing for,
It's the best feeling in the world hearing an orchestra play music you've written. It's unbelievable.
yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Do you write too? You write
yeah,
music?
yeah, 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 yeah. For my
Ah,
first record, I went to Sweden
yeah.
to do the orchestra with the Malmo Orchestra because everyone was saying you're never going to get them to do it because it's going to cost you too much. But it didn't cost that much. But it was such a feeling to go
Yeah.
down and hear one that I was like, oh my, it blew my mind. I was like, wow. Like even them tuning
Yeah.
up sounds amazing. Like it's just, you know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
it's the best feeling ever. Yeah. So I love that. Do you write? You use Finale, is it?
Yeah.
Have you ever used MuseScore?
No.
It's a free open source uh score editor, but it's brilliant. Like because I used to use Sibelius and stuff like that, and I think it's probably the best out of all of them. And it's free. You just download it for free, and it's constantly being updated, so you can get the updates for free and everything like that.
Wow.
Brilliant,
So
yeah.
hard. I can't change now because it's
That's
so. I was writing all morning. I was like typing it in. I don't even use a keyboard. I just go. You know,
yeah.
maybe I'll work out something on the piano and then I'll just crank out a chart. You know,
Brilliant.
I love it.
How long would it take you to write like a full piece if you were say like for example like a quartet or something like that?
Depends on how long the piece is. I work pretty fast now because I've been writing a lot, but it depends on what it is and um yeah, some things come really fast, some things you have to really work at, you know.
Do you score on paper
So
still?
sometimes I'll write stuff out, I'll sketch it out and then I'll put it in. Sometimes I write on Finale because I'm writing for the orchestral instruments directly. So sometimes that's good because I won't lapse into what I like to hear on the piano.
What was the film you scored?
It was called Chicago, America's Hidden War. It's about African American life in Chicago. It's a heavy film.
Oh,
It came out in the pandemic for a couple of weeks, and then, you know, nobody was allowed in the theater so much. So during
ah,
COVID, so then um, Denzel Washington, the actor, really dug it, and he was trying to, you know, push it so that it could get a Netflix thing. So supposedly there's a Netflix thing. We reconfigured the music for a 3-part thing because I had to write a ton of music.
can imagine.
The documentary had to write like 84 minutes of music or something. It's crazy.
Oh,
So then we, you know, reconfigured it for the 3, and we're waiting for that deal to, you know, to. I think it was at the dubbing stage last I heard. So maybe it's going to come out in the next. I hope it comes out before the end of the year. I don't know if it will, but I've been also writing these things for YouTube. They hire me to do these things. It's pretty interesting.
oh, really?
One of them's being released this Friday. It's like it's called Scenes from an Imaginary Film, and they're like bass oriented little
Oh,
crazy things. And then there's another one of those coming out, and there's one coming out on Friday, and then there's another one set of 10 coming out the turn of the year.
oh. So are they like little vignettes of music?
Yeah, yeah, there are a few minutes, or you know, for film creators or people who are, you know, to get the juices going and stuff. And you know, it's a good exercise for me to just blast out stuff
Yeah,
and also to use it to spread the awareness that I'm really doing this now because it's hard. You know, I don't live in Hollywood
yeah. Do you
and I
use?
don't really want to move back. And I have an agent, but usually agents tend to use more handle what you can get. than get
Okay.
you stuff, you know.
Okay, get you.
Sometimes they do, I guess. I mean, I think we'll see.
Do
But
you
I mean, I'm just doing it. I love doing it, and then I'm still playing so much.
yeah,
So trying to juggle it all.
yeah. Do you use sample libraries and stuff like that when if
I
you're
have
demoing
some of
stuff up?
those. Yeah, I have some of that Spitfire stuff. I mean,
Very good.
there's so many libraries. I'm sure I'll probably have to keep buying more because that's the problem with all this. You keep upgrading your stuff and studio, and I'm gonna have to buy another computer, big computer now again, I think pretty soon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's an endless thing, isn't it? It's just constant.
yeah,
I always think those libraries, they sound great. You're like, wow, that sounds amazing. And then when you put them up against a real auction, you're like, okay, you just cannot, at the moment, I don't think you
yeah.
can replicate that. There's just
I'd
something about
rather
that.
write for real people any day. So
Yeah.
I have a feeling I'll probably have to travel a little bit if I get a film that's, you know, that has string orchestra or chamber orchestra. I'm gonna want real people.
So the film that you worked on, how big was the orchestra? Was it only strings or
They
was there
didn't have it
brass in
was
it?
a low budget, so I had string quartet,
Okay.
some jazzy stuff. I had also some great players. Sullivan Fortner played piano. I don't know if you've never heard of him. He's an
No.
amazing young jazz piano player. He's unbelievable player. Jimmy Green, a tenor player. Also, people like Isaiah Sharkey played some guitar. Um, Nate Smith, the drummer,
Oh,
played,
wow. He's a great
and
drummer.
Rogerio Bocato played some percussion. He's a Brazilian guy, and my wife played cello. I had a real string quartet. I did a day of string quartet, and I played some bowed bass stuff and electric bass stuff. And there was a couple of bigger things, but I had to use the synth orchestra because they didn't have any money,
Yeah.
and I just couldn't. If I paid for those two cues, I would have been losing a lot of money, because my fee wasn't that great. It was the first film.
Yeah, I get you. There's a place called Fiverr. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's just like the online place called Fiverr, and there's everything. Like there's musicians, there's artists, there's everything you possibly want. But you pay people like say you want a trumpet player. I know you know loads of people, but like for me,
Yeah, I
probably you're
know a
not.
lot of
Yeah,
folks.
you know loads.
Yeah,
But some of them are like will just high quality players and they're not charging too much, which you feel guilty about sometimes. But I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
good
yeah,
if you
yeah,
want to get players, especially for where I live, it's remote,
yeah.
like a trombone player or anything like that. And just you know, y- that's the one good thing about the internet. You could never, the things you can do now, you couldn't do years ago. Like it's
Absolutely.
incredible.
So you do a lot of writing then. That's good.
I do, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Are you a pianist
I
or
am, yeah, yeah. I play piano and guitar and drums and bits and pieces of like
yeah.
sitar. I have a sitar back there, which is pretty cool. So
Oh, I love that sound.
yeah, I'm trying to learn that. It's quite difficult, but yeah, I'm trying to learn sitar. But yeah, yeah, I'm okay. I'm not the greatest at anything, but I, yeah, I like doing it.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Speaking of like albums, what albums do you like love? Was meant a lot to you? I know that's a tough question. I'm
I
getting
mean,
in deep here.
in every genre, there's millions of records that first two records that made me the hit records that made me want to play the bass were Stevie Wonder, I Was Made to Love Her, and For Once in My Life. Those two hit songs from the '60s.
Brilliant.
Then all those records like Intervisions and all his records were masterpieces. Like I said, Abbey Road, Miles Davis, not only Kind of Blue, but also Nefertiti or Miles Smiles or, those with Ron and those guys, but also the band with, you know, Paul Chambers and Cannonball and Coltrane and Bill Evans, those famous quintet records as well.
Yeah.
Those records are incredible. I also like those Wynton Kelly records, Kelly at Midnight, and Wes Montgomery, Smoking at the Half Note, but also Tequila, Down Here on the Ground, California Dreamin'. There's a lot of records that he made that I love. I love Joe Henderson.
Yeah, yeah. Joe
All of
Henderson's
Joe
amazing.
Henderson's records, In and
And
Out, Page One, you name it. Train, extensive Trainaholic, not just Love Supreme, but also Crescent and Coltrane Sound and the Giant Steps record, the stuff from the Vanguard, the stuff from the Half Note, tons of stuff. Interstellar Space,
yeah.
all of it. I'm a huge Coltrane addict. Love Freddie Hubbard. I did play with him.
You played with
Huge
Freddie
Freddie
Hubbard?
Hubbard. Yes, I did.
Wow.
And the record Red Clay was a game changer for me, from him, but also Open Sesame and Ready for Freddie, those records. And the one called Hub Tones, all his stuff. Dexter Gordon, Stanley Clark's records, his solo records, Chick Corea's records, man. Now He Sings, Now He Sobs, and then a lot of the other stuff too. I listened, of course, to the RTF stuff when I was in high school, and Light as a Feather, also that record. So many records. There's
Yeah.
millions of records, and all the R&B records, whether it's Sam Cooke or Al Green or Aretha Franklin or oh man, there's too many. I love Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Earth, Wind and Fire. All those records were huge to us when we were coming up in the 70s. Singers, tons of singers. Donny Hathaway, Donny Hathaway live. Willie Weeks changed my life. Classical music, Bach cello suites with Casals or with Rostropovich. Or I'm a really good friend with Larry Dutton, who plays in the Emerson String Quartet. I've written music for him, and just for him and me and some other chamber groups, but I never wrote for the Emersons. I wish. But so I'm also a Mark Rogerich fan, classical pianist.
She's amazing.
Every Herbie thing. I played with Claire Fisher. He was a great pianist. Victor Feldman, I played with him. He was a great pianist. McCoy Tyner, played with him. Great pianist.
Amazing.
So many people. So yeah, there's records. I could talk about records until for the next 15 years, I guess.
Me too. That's something brilliant that Blue Note are doing. They're releasing all those old records. Like I'm still waiting for them to release. I don't know. You probably know, obviously, you know it. But I Quebec, Blue and Sentimental. I love that record. I think that's such
Now
a beautiful record.
I love I Quebec, but I don't know that record. Maybe I probably heard songs from it, but
yeah,
I have to check it out.
That's just one of those records.
Who's on it? Who's on it? Do you remember?
Oh, geez, I don't remember, but I have it. But it's a brilliant record. It's just the vibe. Some records have a vibe and a sound. It's just like the sound of it. It sounds like Midnight,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it has that sound and like. But yeah, you're saying like this. All the records you mentioned. Just I was talking about Blue Note re-releasing some of them on vinyl. Some of them sound incredible. Like just incredible. Those Tom Poet ones. Do you still collect vinyl and stuff like that?
I have some bunch of stuff in the basement, and I get some here and there. People give me vinyl, and I have a record player downstairs.
Yeah.
In the front room of the house. At one point, my wife got me in a little rig for Christmas because I didn't have a rig for vinyl for years.
Oh.
We just have tons of CDs and all that. So now it's nice to have a record player again.
Yeah, it's like a different way to listen to music because you actually have to get up and turn it. You're kind of involved in it as well, as opposed to just streaming stuff, which is cool and it's handy. One thing I want to ask you about, I know it's a bit left field, but what do you think of AI with regards to music?
I think they'll probably figure out how to do certain things, but they won't get improvisation down. Because you need a human heart for that.
Yeah.
And a soul.
Yeah.
And a feeling. And AI is a robot. So I don't see how that's going to work.
Yeah.
They can copy orchestration things. They can, even copy film scoring. I don't know. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of interesting things that technology has given us, but
Hmm.
there's some very dangerous things as well.
I
And
agree.
a lot of the kids now are having a really hard time with imagination and staying focused and being able to look at people when they talk to you,
Yeah.
or, it's like that's old fashioned now or something like that. It's weird.
Yeah, yeah. I was teaching kids music there a while ago, and well, not kids, but they're teenagers, you know. But
Yeah.
they're like getting them to listen to one song all the way through. Like it was like at the time, Kate Bush, "Hounds of Love" kind of became popular again with the Netflix show, and I
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
so they loved it, and I was like, "What do you think of the album?" They're like, "Oh, I don't know the album, and listen to one song." I'm like, "Ah, listen to the."
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like because an album is like a journey, So, but
Yeah. We
it's
used to sit there and look at the liner notes, the pictures, and we used to
yeah.
hang out at my brother had a band, and I was in his band with the older guys, his friends. And there was one guy, and he would do blindfold tests. Like he'd put on a record and not show us what it was. We'd have to figure it out. And all that stuff was so much fun.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of lost, isn't it? Which is
Yeah.
sad because it's
Yeah, I think I'm going to do a Kickstarter to raise some money. There's a record that I did
hmm,
a few years back with Chris Potter and Brian Blade. It's called Live in Italy.
okay,
It's a live record, and I'm really proud of that record. And I want to make a vinyl of it.
brilliant.
So, yeah, it's on my label, so I can do that. But I just need some money to do that. It's like vinyl is not cheap to do
Yeah,
it well.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. It's cheap to do it if you want to do it badly. No, not cheap, but you can do. I've heard some terribly bad records. I think that's that's the kind of problem with like those labels. Like there's like labels take a CD and they'll just put it on a vinyl. The covers look fine, but they're actually just transferred from a CD. They're not actually properly transferred. So, and they're in the shops and people are buying them, and you're like,
well, here's the thing. I might have to resort to that on some of my very old records because I don't know where the masters are. Like,
really?
they've run out of the record company doesn't own them, so they're reverting back to me, but I don't know where because
Oh,
somewhere in a vault somewhere, and they won't tell you. And I
oh,
might have to resort to like my first records, my first 5 or 6 records. They're slowly reverting back to me. I think my first record is already mine now, but they took it. It's off streaming. It's gone. Like we can't even. I mean, maybe you can check it out on YouTube, probably,
oh,
maybe. But my first record, and that one, a lot of times when fans say, "Oh, that's first," I love that record, my first record, and I'm like, "Wow, that's cool." I'd like them to still be able to really buy it, and but so I'm gonna have to see. I might have to remaster it from a CD or something. I don't know what to do.
oh, wow. Too bad you can't find the masters for that.
I'm gonna
Oh.
try, but I doubt I'm gonna be able to. These corporate things are tough.
What label were you on?
GRP, which
Okay,
doesn't exist anymore.
it's even harder now.
Yeah.
Wow, wow. What was before I let you go? I know I've taken up. Sorry, I've taken up probably too much of your time.
No,
Um,
no, it's fine.
what was your memories of recording your first record?
That was super exciting. Chick Corea got me the deal.
Mm,
You know, I remember him talking to the record company guy, and they were like, "Well, we want to sign the saxophone player in your band. But we don't really want." And he said, "No, no. If you sign him, you have to have the bass player. The bass player is a composer."
yeah, yeah.
And so he said, you know, and then they were like, "Well, would you produce it then?" He goes, "Sure, I'll produce it." And then they said, "Okay, well, we have to hear some demos first." And he said, "You'll hear the record when it's finished." And he just kind of blew in there and just like got me this deal. And then he came back to me and said, "Look, they want me to produce, but don't worry. I know you know what you want to do, but I will help you learn how to make records." And I was like, "Wow, that's great. I need that." And I've never made a record of my own. So, and then he was really helpful, helped me organize things and do things. And then I just said, "Well, I have a question. He said, what is it? I said, would you play on it too? And he said, sure. So he played on some stuff. I got to get all my favorite people, and that record was #1 on Billboard for a little while, the jazz chart, and
Brilliant.
that record was really kind of catapulted things into like another place in terms of my own writing and playing, and it was still people come up to me and go, that's my favorite record. I'm like, it's nice, but it's also a little depressing because I've made like 17 records.
Have you a
So
favorite
it's
of
like,
have you a favorite of your own record?
I don't know. They're all different.
The latest one. It's always the latest.
Yeah,
Everyone
yeah.
loves.
I did a solo bass record called Soul of the Bass a few years back, and I'm really proud of that. It took me years to get up the guts to make that. And it's not all completely solo. There's a lot of it is, but there's also some stuff with Nate Smith is playing a little bit, and there are these kind of open sounds, kind of interesting record. And but in 1979 I heard Dave Holland's Emerald Tears record. It was a beautiful solo bass record.
That's a great record.
And then it took about 40 years for me to get the nerve up to do one, For 2019 I did mine,
I seen a really cool video on you playing in Italy. You were playing in like.
Oh, that's a new one. Yeah,
That's
that was from the summer. That was from the summer. And the track is from my solo bass record. It's from the record, but then we did like a music video of me playing in Sibri, which is an ancient Magna Graecia town
Well, the Greeks
from
built that, didn't they?
800 BC. Yeah, it was Greece at that
Amazing.
time,
That's amazing.
but it became Calabria, and I'm from Calabria, my father's side. So
Oh,
I have a little Greek. So I do have. If you're Calabrese, you probably have some Greek blood, and I do have a little. And then I also have some Levantine, which is like Palestinian, and so I have Arabic because I'm also the other half of the family's from Naples, so I'm very southern.
Oh,
So
are you particular on
yeah.
your pizza? I know Naples
Oh yeah,
pizza. Yes.
yes, and my espresso. I can make you a serious Napolitan espresso. I got it down. I have a really great machine, and I have only Neapolitan coffee. That's all I use. Pretty
Wow.
much.
Okay. That's cool. Have you ever done any genealogy?
Well, yeah, and that's part of that. The reason I was there again. I go a lot now down there because we got to go to the town where my grandfather was from. They made me an honorary citizen of that town. This is over 10 years ago. I brought my father, and it was pretty intense. This summer, almost all of my siblings came too.
Oh,
So they,
wow.
except for one sister, so they freaked out. They had never been there yet, and so that was really cool. And my brother and my wife played with me on a concert down there in Calabria, and they gave me another award. They're always, they like to. They're really excited about one of their own kind of going out into the world. Even though I never was. I was born in Brooklyn. My dad was born in Brooklyn, but my grandfather came over on a boat when he was 16 to New York.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, that's a lovely note to end the podcast on. John, thanks so much for doing it. It's an honor to speak to you, man. I loved it. Thank you very much.
I hope I get to meet you in person. So you live in what town?
I live in
Or
Sligo.
near?
It's the west coast of Ireland. It's just literally
Ah,
beside the beach is just down the road. So it's
wow.
yeah.
So you're a little far from the city there.
Yeah, good bit. Yeah, but Ireland's so small. I mean, it's if you go to Dublin, it's only 4 hours. It's not like,
Oh, okay.
it's not
Yeah, I've been to Dublin before, and I've been to
Galway probably.
I don't know if I was in Galway, but what's the one with the
Cork,
crazy Cork, where the crazy festival
the
where
Cork
people are
Jazz
just
Festival.
going all around the city with giant, Guinnesses, and going crazy. That cracked me up. People walking around with these giant, it's insane.
That's Ireland. That's
Yeah.
Ireland. Any excuse to have a drink.
But the Guinness is an interesting beer because it's like drinking a loaf of bread. I love bread, and I love Irish brown bread too.
Oh, do you?
I love it. Oh yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
nice, man. Nice.
Seriously, love that. And scones and all that stuff.
Scones, yeah, with a bit of cream. That's what you
Yeah,
want.
clotted cream. Like the Brits like their clotted cream.
Yeah. So sorry, you broke up there for a second.
I did some stuff when I did. I went to when I did this concerto that Mark Anthony Turnage, the British composer, wrote me a beautiful bass concerto at one point, and it had 6-string electric and bowed bass and pizzicato and everything. It's really beautiful. It's called A Prayer Out of Stillness. Really cool piece. And the first when I landed over there to do it and work the piece and we rehearsed was with the Scottish Chamber Orchestra. It was so beautiful. They played great. And then I played it with Swedish Chamber. And then later on, I even got to do it with the London Symphony Strings. So
amazing.
that was fun.
Amazing.
Yeah. And some other orchestras too, in crazy, like in Tallinn, Estonia, and frightening compared to like playing jazz. Because, I'm just standing up there in the front. It's just me, and that was a very big rite of passage for me.
Have you any plans to come to Ireland?
I don't have anything on the books, but I sure hope I get one. We did come with Wayne. We played in Dublin, and I know I'm coming to London in the fall, but not Ireland.
Gotta get to Ireland, man. Gotta get to Ireland.
Yeah.
Well, if you do come, let me know, and wherever you are, I'll come up to meet you. It'd be great to meet you.
All right, Brother Paul.
Thank you very much, man. John.
Talk to you soon, man. Thank you.
Take care. Cheers, brother. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.